And Golden State continues, despite all their great teams. They have a long, long way to go to maybe get to 500 in the Valley of the Sun. Buzzer sounds, game's over. Final score 113-105. The Warriors all time in the Valley of the Sun are now 39-96.
Going back to the days of Charles Barkley and the Suns of old, they've always put the hurt on the Golden State Warriors, especially out there in the Valley of the Sun. Hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Warriors Wrap-Up. This is Devone along with you as the Golden State Warriors have now lost 4 in a row, 113-105, as Tim Roy just gave us the call and passes along the numbers that are not good as the Warriors, once again, in a tailspin here that started out in San Antonio, a loss to Brooklyn, and then, of course, going right down to the nub against OKC and falling short. And then tonight, this game was pretty much done in the first 2 quarters as the Phoenix Suns could not miss from three-point territory. And really, not to oversimplify this game, but it was the Suns who were spot on from beyond the arc and the Golden State Warriors who were not. Just taking a look really quick at the recapping of that first quarter where the Suns shot it at 60% from 3. They were 7 of 10, and that really just sort of set the pace, much the same way that Brooklyn came out against the Golden State Warriors and OKC, if you think about it. Just sort of a lethargic approach to the game to start for the Warriors. And if there's anything that you can take away from today's game and sort of these recent losses, is that the Warriors just do not resemble the same team in the first month of the campaign where they were blitzing teams. There was that energy defensively. And, of course, they were one of the pleasant surprises in the early portion of the NBA campaign. And you had Steph, obviously, but you offset that with Buddy Hield. Well, as oftentimes is the case, you know, these things get passed around from team to team, and people are certainly aware of the secret sauce that is the Warriors, and they have solved that puzzle, at least when you think about the recent rash and loss of games, and Buddy Hield is just simply not getting the sort of open looks that he enjoyed early on in the season. And as a result, right now, the Warriors looking very pedestrian, losing once again 113-105, the final numbers tonight. In that first quarter, Brandon Podziemski, we'll have more on him coming up in just a bit, but he did get off to a good start. He got the start at the number 2 spot. We've seen that sort of revolving door since the injury of DeAnthony Melton. Again, we can't continue to value enough of just how important DeAnthony Melton means to this Golden State Warrior team. In his absence, Lindy Waters got a run and an opportunity to start at the 2 spot. And now we're seeing Brandon Podziemski got the start tonight. And again, he came out and he played well early on with 2 threes, one of which he banked in. That's never pretty unless you're calling glass, and it was straight away, so I don't think he was. He'd finished with 8 points and was 3 of 3 in that first quarter. Jonathan Kuminga was active. He would get to the line some 6 times. And despite the Suns shooting it, as I mentioned, 7 of 10 from behind the stripe, they led, but this game was still very much obviously hanging in the balance after one. 35-29, the Warriors were down just 6. And then the second quarter happened as the Phoenix Suns just lit it up from three-point land. In that second quarter, Wiggins did have 11 points. And at the break, Podziemski would finish with 10 points, but just was not good. After that first quarter, as I mentioned, he had the 8 points, but Podziemski's shot selection from that point forward was just off. And don't want to belabor the point and certainly don't want to circle him and go after him, but this is going from bad to worse when you think about Podziemski and just his offensive his unproductivity. And we know it's been well documented how he certainly worked hard over the offseason. He had improved his game, so we thought, and it was a season in which he was looking for improvement and looking to make that significant step in year 2 and shooting the 3, developed the mid-range. He had that little Jimmy develop from like 18 to 17 feet, something he didn't have in his bag a year ago. And obviously he can get to the rim with sort of that awkward left hand. And so there were huge expectations. And a lot of it, as Draymond said, whether you want to put it on the media, that's ridiculous. But, you know, a lot of this was just the pressure that he created, and certainly the media bought into it. And he didn't play well early on in the season. And right now, well, you know, we talk about how Podziemski is still a plus because of all the quote-unquote basketball plays and how he makes the smart play, and it sort of balances out the fact that he doesn't score the basketball. And again, Steve Kerr will covet those players that are not necessarily filling it up if you can do all the other things. And Podziemski has made a brief career in doing that, whether it's the charges, grabbing rebounds, balancing the floor, putting the ball in the right guy's hands. And that's why he's getting run. That's why he stays in the rotation. However, the inability to score right now it's getting a little absurd. And his three-point shooting, getting to the rim, it's not even close right now. And whether it's in his head or whether he just doesn't have the physical tools to score at this level on a consistent basis, only time will tell. But right now, it's getting to the point where I don't know that he can stay on the floor and maintain that argument. Well, he's not scoring, but everything else that he does is such a benefit to the Warriors because look out, here comes Pat Spencer, who's doing the exact same thing, and he could potentially steal those minutes. If you're not going to score the basketball, well, then I don't know if I'm Steve Kerr, if I can continue to rely on you as much as I have up to this point. Steph Curry, you could see that Curry a little rust after not playing in that last game because of the bad knees, the old knees, the arthritic knees. I mean, this is what happens when you're pushing 37 years of age. But Curry, 0 of 5 in that first half. He didn't score in the first half, and that should tell you pretty much everything you needed to know. And when Steph Curry is not scoring, and of course we talked about this on Warriors This Week, and when the Warriors struggled against OKC, and OKC had those 9 consecutive stops where the Warriors did not, on 9 consecutive possessions, they were not able to produce a basket. That's partly because they're going up against the best defense in all of the NBA and the best two-way players that the NBA has to provide, that being, of course, OKC, who did it, by the way, in that second half without Jalen Williams. Caruso didn't even suit up, and, of course, Chet Holmgren, who got hurt in the last meeting against the Golden State Warriors in that collision with Andrew Wiggins. But still, the defense was good enough to rebuke the Golden State Warriors. And at the time, we said, okay, well, this is something that everybody knew going into the season. And quite frankly, we've been talking about this for 2 years now, and that is who's going to be the number 2, and not who's going to be the number 2 in quarters 1 through 3, but in crunch time, in the closing minutes of the games, who's the one guy not named Steph Curry that you have any level of confidence of saying, I got it, I'll take you home. Well, that clearly was the storyline against OKC because it's not Andrew Wiggins, not in the closing moments, although he's played much better this year, and it's certainly not Jonathan Kuminga. And I think what we found out tonight is that even with the return of Steph Curry, there is still a void at number 2. And Steph Curry, while he can give you a lot of points and he can obviously, give you points down the stretch, the fact that there is that significant drop-off is something that you're not only the Phoenix Suns, but I think going forward, everybody's just going to focus on Steph Curry. And even with the return of Steph Curry, it's a team that just has a bunch of guys. It's a bunch of good players, and we could talk about the depth, and that was a fun story early on. But now it's teams that are just simply saying, look, we're going to send 2, if not 3 guys at Steph Curry, and you just prove to us that there is somebody else on this basketball team, especially late in games, that can score the basketball with any level of consistency. And I know it's been done to death, but that really is just if you're trying to find out the reason as to why this team is struggling and has lost 4 in a row, that might be it in a nutshell. Meanwhile, on the other side of the coin, talking about the Phoenix Suns, 14 of 21 in that first half from 3. And that's the way the game's played right now, right? If you make your threes, you have a good chance of winning. And then, of course, if you're the Warriors, who are not good from three-point territory and really haven't been good for a while now, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. Grayson Allen, who led the NBA in three-point shooting a year ago, he had 13 points at the half, 3 of 4 from 3. Kevin Durant was good. He finished with 10 points. It was a 17-point advantage, 66-49 going into the break for the Phoenix Suns. Third quarter action, the Warriors, I don't know exactly what it is that Steve Kerr said to the team, but whatever it was, it worked. And, this is It's the NBA. It's all about runs. And clearly, Phoenix wasn't shooting the three and didn't have the same energy to start the second half, and the Warriors took advantage. They went on a 7-0 run. Steph Curry at one point was only 1 of 8 midway in that third quarter. Then he would catch fire and finish with 17 points in the quarter as the defense got much better, as the closeouts, running guys off the line, and I think it was a combination of that and the fact that Phoenix wasn't shooting it nearly as well in that third quarter, and you knew that at some point the three-point shooting would level out, and sure enough, the Warriors began to make their run. But despite the fact that the Suns were not shooting it very well from three-point territory and the Warriors were locking up defensively, still you had that feel that there was never any sort of offensive flow. Despite Steph Curry playing well, despite them getting within 6 points at one point, there was just not any level of continuity, I think, throughout the entire 4 quarters of this contest. As they started the fourth quarter, the Warriors were down 7 after they trimmed 10 points off of that lead. And the Warriors continued with that energy for the first part of that fourth quarter. And then the last 7 minutes, they sort of reverted back to where they were in the beginning of that contest, where the defense, once again, was a half step slow. And that's all it takes when you have Grayson Allen and you got Devin Booker and you got guys that can shoot it from three-point territory. As the last 7 minutes were a bit of a collapse. The Warriors did, however, go on a run and get it within 6. A key play in that fourth quarter when they were down 6 and the Warriors were gaining that momentum. And while they were within and connected to the Phoenix Suns and down 6, it was a huge turnover by Kevin Durant a turnover by that of Draymond Green, which led to a Kevin Durant 3, and that was with 90 seconds to go, and they pretty much did not look back from that point forward. The Warriors did go on a 17-4 run in that fourth quarter, but they lost this game not in the fourth quarter, but rather it was in that first half where the Phoenix Suns just would not miss in shooting all those threes, as the Golden State Warriors, once again, they lose their 4th consecutive game, as the Warriors now on the season fall to 12-7, and now just 1 game in front of the Phoenix Suns. And it does not get any easier, as the Warriors once again are going to have to take on the Denver Nuggets for the first time this year, and they're going to do it on the road. And then they return home to that baseball series where they're going to take on Minnesota. The Warriors right now are not in an enviable position when you think about the 4 consecutive losses and now what it is that they have to do in dealing with a good Denver Nugget and, of course, one of the best players in the NBA in Mr. Jokic. All right, we're going to continue here on the Warriors wrap-up. I see you, Matt, in Richmond. We'll take some of your phone calls. We'll continue to break it down as the Golden State Warriors lose tonight to the Phoenix Suns. We'll get into some of the individual numbers. Warriors wrap-up continues here on 95.7 The Game right after this.
Block here in the early going. Pajemski accelerates all the way down. Goes right corner. There's Draymond again. And he knocks down a three in front of the Suns bench. Boy, what a crazy start to this game. You could feel almost the intensity and the pace.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Final numbers, 113-105, as the Golden State Warriors drop their fourth consecutive game to fall 12-7 of the season. The Phoenix Suns, who, by the way, started the season at 9-1 and then proceeded to lose 6 of their next 7 games. They get a win, obviously, tonight to go to 11-8, now just a game back of the Warriors. By the way, for the Phoenix Suns, it's all about Kevin Durant. They're 10-2 when KD is uniform for the Phoenix Suns and 1-6 when he doesn't play. Devin Booker, by the way, tonight, that makes it 8 consecutive games versus the Warriors in which he scores 25 or more points. He had 27 points tonight. Just taking a look at the numbers really quick for the Golden State Warriors. Andrew Wiggins had 18, another solid performance for him. But again, if you get in those closing moments, Andrew Wiggins has got to be more of a consistent scorer and somebody that gives that sense of security that he can take you across the finish line. Steph Curry, who, as I talked about, did not score in the first 2 quarters. At halftime, he had the big goose egg, but finished with 23 points, but looked rusty throughout after missing that last game against Brooklyn. Draymond Green had 13 points on the contest. Meanwhile, Jonathan Kuminga, sort of an uninspiring 12 points for Kuminga, who continues to struggle from the free throw line. All right, want to open up the phone lines. 888-957, 888-957-95. What's our phone over here, Cameron? 888-957-9570. Man, this is late for me. 957-9570. 888 precedes that. My goodness. Matt in Richmond, what's going on with you? How are you tonight, Matt?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for taking my call. I think basketball is like any other sport where if you are always, it takes a solid defense to win a championship. But if you're always playing defense, you just wear down. If you're not getting any offensive production, your defense is just going to wear down every time. I think that's what Steve Kerr's system is based off of. You want a lot of good defenders, especially come crunch time. You need more people to score the ball. So for that reason, I think the Warriors should go out and get Brandon Ingram. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, thanks so much, Matt. And I don't know that necessarily Brandon Ingram is going to be the answer. And there's a reason why Brandon Ingram is getting shopped out there in New Orleans. But I appreciate it. And I would agree with you to a certain degree. Listen, the Warriors overall, they're 4th in the NBA in defense. But it's on the offensive end where there's clearly issues with this team as far as scoring the basketball. And we saw it against OKC. And the reason why I continue to go back to that OKC game, because it was clearly evident you didn't have Steph Curry, and yet this was still a close ball game. And you go the last 9 consecutive possessions in a close game that's right there for you to win, and you get denied on each and every one of those. Somebody has got to get you a hoop. Somebody's got to be able to go ISO, take you off the bounce, and either get to the free throw line or get a bucket. Listen, I wasn't a big proponent of this, but it does make for the argument of bringing in a Paul George. Now, obviously, you don't want Paul George now, but during the offseason where the Warriors were thinking about getting into the market and making a bid on someone like that, a Lauri Markkanen. I was, and I still am, although it's certainly losing steam. I don't think that's the way to go simply because of the contracts and being beholden to a guy, having to give up all this young talent as well as draft picks. But you can understand sort of theoretically what it is that the Warriors are thinking, in that you need somebody aside from Steph Curry that can get you buckets. And when you look at someone like that of the Phoenix Suns, who are clearly a top-heavy team, they've got 3 guys in Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, who are obviously proven NBA scorers and perennial NBA All-Star players. Is if Kevin Durant's off the floor, if Kevin Durant isn't feeling it, then Devin Booker is very comfortable. He's been to an NBA championship and didn't win it, but he's an Olympian, and Devin Booker can drive you home, and Devin Booker knows how to fill it up. And Devin Booker is somebody that you can suffocate, and he's still going to get his. He knows how to get to his spot. And those players are few and far between, and right now the Warriors have one. And it's Steph Curry. And I think as the season goes along, that narrative is becoming more and more clear that, yeah, the 12 and 13 guys, I won't call it shtick, but it was fun, and it was resulting in wins. But the question I think that sort of hovered around all of this, is it sustainable? Is it something that you can actually ride that horse throughout the entire season in a full 82 games and be a top 2 or 3 seed and get back to the Western Conference Finals? And as we're finding out that as we get ankle deep into the season and we're almost 20 games in, which usually is sort of a good barometer to see just the identity of your basketball team, well, the wheels are sort of falling off, and the idea of 12 or 13 players playing is no longer nearly as effective. And what has sort of haunted this team over the last couple of years is once again rearing its head, and that is Steph scores the basketball, but nobody else has the capability, especially now that Klay Thompson's out of the building, of giving you a solid 25 to 30 points a contest, or just a 20 to 25 points a game, or just somebody that can score the ball late in the contest, somebody who can get theirs, somebody who can create their own shot, whether it's a mid-range or a step-back three. And it doesn't have to be a superstar. Cam, is that your cue saying that I'm going too long? All right, we want to get to the Chilton Auto Body player of the game. Crashing the boards, brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. And we're going to do it with the other team, that being one Devin Booker. As I mentioned, 8 straight games against the Golden State Warriors with 25 or more points. Tonight, he went for 27 as the Phoenix Suns once again take care of the Golden State Warriors. It's now 4 consecutive losses for the Warriors, and it doesn't get any easier when they have to take on the Denver Nuggets. Let's hear from the head coach, Steve Kerr, and his thoughts after tonight's loss. Do we want to go to Coach Kerr?
Phoenix was our biggest problem. We didn't play a bad game. 9 turnovers, 28 assists. We didn't make shots. I mean, we had some good looks, and the ball didn't go in. But they were great. I mean, 18 for 35 from 3. First half, I thought our guys were actually playing pretty solid defense, rotating, flying around, but they spread you out, and they did a great job of getting behind us a few times, pulling in our rotation guys, and then hitting threes behind the play, and all those threes in the first half. Obviously, forced our hand a little bit, and we had to change our coverages. But this is the modern NBA. Threes go in like that, it's tough to win.
You've even talked about the 12-man, 13-man rotation was always kind of destined to look different during struggles. I mean, on a night like tonight, does it feel like you're searching when you're playing 13-man? Yeah,
I was searching the whole first half. I played 14, I think. I played 14 in the first half. 13. Yeah, 13 in the first half. I was searching, played everybody, and I didn't love the early part of the second quarter. We didn't have the juice and the energy. Draymond talked about it at practice yesterday. When you've lost a few in a row, you can't count on making 23s and winning a game with your offense. You got to dig your way out of it. And I didn't think our energy and our juice was there, our focus. And so that's why I kept moving people around. And then second half, we found something. And obviously didn't play Moses and Kyle. And so we've got to adapt and adjust. If things aren't working, which obviously right now we're in a little bit of a funk, then we got to think about the rotation and what we're going to do with it. But it's I like all these guys. I believe in all of them. But we have to do what's right to help us win a game.
How do you think Steph looked tonight?
He got it going in the second half. Obviously, he looked a little a little slow in the first half, like he wasn't moving like he normally does, and then he got going in the second half and looked fine, but a little bit of a slow start.
How much of this is something you're going to have to manage, not only in the short term, but long term throughout the course of the season? Yeah,
I mean, he's 36, this is all part of, getting older and, managing his minutes, his body, and Rick and his staff are the best in the world at what they do, and we're working together every day on this stuff, and so we'll figure it out.
When you are searching, like playing 13 guys in the 14 minutes, there's not a lot of time for you to make decisions.
Right.
So what are you looking for?
I'm looking for force and energy and juice. I'm looking for guys who are talking on defense. It was a morgue out there in the second quarter. Defensively, it was I couldn't hear anybody, and so there has to be a collective force and competitiveness if you've lost a few in a row, especially. But I couldn't hear anything. There was just nothing, and so we made some changes and tried to get more energy into the game.
The head coach, Steve Kerr, his thoughts following their fourth consecutive loss tonight at the hands of the Phoenix Suns. 113-105 is the final score. The Warriors now 12-7 on the season. Meanwhile, the Phoenix Suns, after starting 9-1, improved to 11-8. One game back of the Warriors. The Warriors, by the way, now have slid to the number 3 seed behind Oklahoma City, who continues to drive the pace car out there in the West, and Memphis, believe it or not, has caught fire and now is at the number 2 spot overall in the Western Conference. Interesting that he referred to the defense and the lack of chatter and talking to one another as a morgue. And this is typically why you see so many guys getting an opportunity. And if you ask yourself why is Pat Spencer getting an opportunity to play basketball, is because Steve Kerr will not hesitate to give anybody a chance to prove themselves, and especially after doing well. He usually likes to reward guys, and that's sort of what it is that you're seeing, I think, with Spencer, who, listen, he didn't fill it up against his last time out against Oklahoma City. He didn't score the basketball, but he's a guy that just made the right plays and, again, gave a sense of security to Steve Kerr that he knows what to do with the ball when it's in his hands. And that's oftentimes that's Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr he's a little atypical that way in terms of head coaches, in that he wants people that are going to make the right basketball play, which is why I think Jonathan Kuminga continues to be so frustrating for him, because the buy-in has never really been there in terms of defensive rotations when it comes to Jonathan Kuminga. But just getting back to the defense, or the lack thereof, in that second quarter, I mean, this is a team that obviously has lost 4 in a row, but there's not the excuse of playing the 3 games in 4 nights, as was the case when you had to take on San Antonio, which sort of started this downfall. I mean, this is a team that should have been well rested, had not played a basketball game since Wednesday night. But I'm with the coach. You could clearly see it. Anybody who was watching this from home, that this was very low energy. And yeah, it's a make or miss lead. I agree with the coach that if a team's going to hit their threes, then oftentimes there's not much you can do about it. And that's the way the game's being played these days. But there still seemed as though the Warriors were just a half step slower. And you could see in the beginning of the season, when there was that energy and teams were crossing the timeline, the effective double teams, and just how the Warriors were playing with that defense that was setting up the offense. And that's oftentimes has been the remedy to their success going back to the dynastic run. But right now, offensively, this is a team that just cannot, for whatever reason, get on track, I think, with any level of consistency. The playing of the 13 guys, and not including Moses Moody, continues to be a bit baffling. And I know the Moses Moody fans are out there. I think Kyle Anderson playing limited minutes, or let's see, did Kyle Anderson even get run in tonight's contest, which I don't think he did. No, he didn't. So Trace Jackson Davis played in the 15 minutes. And Kyle Anderson did. He played in 7 minutes. Moses Moody played a total of 3 minutes. I think Kyle Anderson, without Nurkic, the Suns were going a bit smaller when Plumlee was off the floor. How Steve Kerr arrives at this thing, if that's an indicator that Kyle Anderson isn't giving him the sort of defensive effort. Moses Moody continues to be, a player that I would just love to crawl into the head of Steve Kerr. Certainly this isn't any criticism directed his way, but the Moses Moody is, to whether or not he plays basketball games and gets minutes, it's sometimes a bit baffling because he'll play well and then you won't see Moody, and then he plays poorly and you don't see Moody. So it's pretty difficult to decipher just what it is that the young man has to do to stay on the floor. Meanwhile, as I talked about Podziemski and his lack of offense, and what happens with Podziemski, who continues to get serious minutes in the rotation and got the start tonight. And I think clearly you could see that Podziemski is, I think he gets the message early on that just shoot it. Let it fly, as Draymond Green says. Do not care what anybody says or what anybody's thinking. You got to shoot your way out of this. And early on in the contest, he was letting it go. He banked in that three, actually had a big smile on his face. But as the shots and the shot selection gets more and more horrific, he stops pulling the trigger. And you can clearly see that even when he has an opening, he's getting a little Ben Simmons-esque, is that he doesn't, it's like a hot potato. He doesn't want to shoot it now. And that's when it's climbed in between his ears. And I think Podziemski's in a different space right now. And the young man he's got to work out of this, and he's got to contribute somehow, some way offensively. And I don't care how good he is in terms of taking charges and how good he is with the ball in his hands. If you're going to get that much burn, you've got to score, especially when you've got players like Trace Jackson Davis is not somebody that's going to give you points. A GP2 is not somebody that you're going to rely on that's going to give you points. There's too many of those guys. And you can't space the floor. Teams are simply just not going to extend on you. And it's going to get to the point where, 4 guys are going to be on step because there's no reason to guard anybody else on the Golden State Warriors. So somebody not named Steph is going to have to rear their head and be a consistent scorer on this basketball team. And as good as Wiggins has been, and we've seen, again, Jonathan Kuminga be spotty throughout the season, but again, tonight was another perfect indicator of neither one of those guys giving you consistent scoring, especially down the stretch. And as a result, the Golden State Warriors fall once again, this time to the Phoenix Suns. That's now 4 consecutive losses for the Golden State Warriors. And as I mentioned, it's a date now with the Denver Nuggets, as the Nuggets right now, a team that is also trying to figure things out, as the Denver Nuggets are not playing all that well. I want to bring up the Western Conference standings here, but as you look at the Nuggets at 10-7, and they won their last game out, but the Nuggets now have slid to the 5th seed, and this is they've been hovering around 500 throughout the majority of the season, and a lot of it has to do with Jamal Murray, who has not been on track. He hasn't been healthy throughout the season. The big 3 of Porter's also been sort of hit or miss. So those 3 players who are still very much in the sweet spot in terms of being in their late 20s at the apex of their careers have not been as good as they were 2 years ago, of course, when they were the Kings of the Hill and won an NBA championship. Jokic, meanwhile, dude's a beast. I mean, people might have Jokic fatigue in terms of giving that guy another MVP, but show me somebody else right now that's better than him. And I don't want to hear AD at this juncture, because Jokic it goes through him, and if they need him shooting threes, he does it. He'd rather not be the guy that has to score the basketball, but that's what he's doing because, as I mentioned, Jamal Murray right now and company are just not holding up their end of the bargain. But the Nuggets, always tough, 10-7 on the season. This is a team that always good at home as well, and that's where the Warriors are going to have to try and beat one of the better teams in all of the NBA, and certainly, if not the best player, then a guy that is again, I think, going to make his claim for his. Oh God, has it ever happened? I don't believe it has. 4 consecutive MVPs, and it's the Joker who is trying to become the first in NBA history to do that. All right. We, of course, will have all the pregame knowledge for you leading up to that contest when the Warriors take on the Nuggets. And, of course, Stay tuned for the Warriors wrap-up immediately following that contest. That'll do it for me as the Golden State Warriors once again fall to the Phoenix Suns. They lose their 4th in a row. They are now 12-8 on the season. Don't forget, of course, we'll have 49er pregame, postgame. Keep it right here on 95.7 The Game. Until then, this is Dan Devone saying enjoy the rest of the evening, everybody. So long.